Hello, everyone. Welcome today to our Agilist webinar. So today we have Mark, who is, I'm going to introduce him in a minute. So we have two topics today, and we do this session every month, either the last Wednesday or the last Saturday of every month. And different topics is what we pick. And the goal is to kind of, whoever joins, talk through some of the Agile topics that are often debated. And our goal is to kind of unlearn some of the things that we assume to be true, right? So that's why we call this as the Agile Unlearning Series. And Agilist is kind of a boutique Agile shop that is focused on helping people unlearn over the years, all the things they've learned so that they can be better at what they do. So the first presentation today is from Mark. And I want to, before I bring in Mark, I want to introduce him a bit, and then we can have Mark start. So I met Mark a few months ago, and right away I knew he's a great presenter. But then just a little bit about him. He has been with the US Marine Corps for 23 years. He just came out of service, and now he's also really good in judo and jiu-jitsu. So he's a martial arts trainer. He teaches right now to various people still back, he's a teacher. He was born in Louisiana, I think, or from the state of Louisiana. So he likes all the Louisiana food, and likes food and lives in San Diego, right? So that's a bit about Mark. And with that, Mark, I'm going to turn it back to you for you to run us through this first session that you wanted to do. So after you, Mark.
Thanks, Vibhu. Appreciate that introduction, and thanks again to you and the Agilists for giving me the opportunity. I want to share with all of you today a discussion on finding your change rhythm and kind of unveil some of the discoveries and that I'm still learning and enjoying making. And I encourage throughout this that we have a discussion, and I want to welcome your interaction. So a little bit about me. What I do is I'm a DoD trainer. Even though I retired, I still work as a trainer, training active duty military and special operations. I'm program manager for a leadership assessment center with Penn State, and I work in security design and innovation as well as an instructor. And I use those practices in teaching and advising. And what am I? Well, I'm a veteran Marine Raider, which is Marine Special Operations for those of you who are somewhat new, but not very new. And I'm an Agilist practitioner. I'm a change agent. Some may call me the honey badger, or at least you have to honey badge sometimes to make change happen. And then I'm a global Epicurean. I love food, love all kinds of food. And so we're gonna dive into that. So today we're gonna talk about a few things here. Ultimately, I want to explain the benefits of developing a change rhythm, and then kind of go through some behaviors that you can take your teams through to help develop their change rhythms. We're going to cover factors of change, a little bit about psychology, balancing proactive or reactive, and we're going to talk about your daily 1%. So go ahead and type in the chat. What is your favorite food? Don't think too hard. Just pull it up. It could be something you had today. We got Jessica with ice cream. We have Vibhu with Thai. And Willie with sushi. Hey, that's great. Now, let's twist this around a little bit. What if that was the only thing you could eat for an entire year? Would you like that just as much as you just mentioned? Type in the chat. Would you care for that? Who wants to eat the same thing for a year? Vibhu, no? Jessica, maybe. Ice cream, that's all you can eat for a year. That would be boring, no pizza. Now, an origin story of some a change rhythm here. I was while I was in the Marine Corps in Marine Special Operations, we had a design challenge, and it was to look at a language program and how it was being implemented throughout the organization and how we were using it overseas. And as we're doing this design challenge, some things came to bear on how we went about navigating this change. So were constantly converging and diverging in thought and throwing things on the board and going back and forth. And it was this great collaborative endeavor. And then we came down to needing to present something, and we rapidly threw this together after we had done all this collaboration without formulating a plan. And we put this Storms of Change and Garden of Relevance on there. And I wanted to share this with you mainly because of the so what. And what came out of this was this barrel of influence that needed an agility stick inside of this barrel. And that agility stick was fostering this change rhythm. And that's where this concept of change rhythm came to be for me. And I'm still discovering it today, and we'll discover more as we go on. So I want to build on what Lindsay talked about, what Jessica Lindsay talked about last week. And when she spoke about the thought model, and ultimately she went through circumstances, thought, feeling, action, result, and thoughts impact results. And we're going to build on what Jessica spoke about throughout this and turn into some more of these great things. So when we look at our culture of agility in our organization, in our own lives, we can look at these as an equation across structures, processes, and behaviors. And as we go through those structures, there's a few bullets in each one, but I want to focus you mainly to the behaviors area. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Building on what Jessica spoke out with mindset, and then moving through some skill set for empowered action. Now, this, you can see in the middle, we have Scrum and Sprint and project management, change management, all these process-driven things that we often think about in isolation, but we sometimes miss those behavioral actions that make those processes as impactful and relevant. We can think about it this way. All organizations are made up of people. So people ultimately drive behaviors, which drives culture. So why is there so much change in the world today? You know, after deploying around the world for over 23 years, working in conflict zones and with partner nations throughout different areas, different regions from the Middle East to Southeast Asia, I often wonder the same thing. And so as I continue to dive into this question, you know, we can realize now that we're more connected than we ever have been. I mean, we're doing things over the digital medium here. We have, you know, instant computers in our pocket. And even though we might be more connected, we might not be connecting in those right ways. Additionally, the convergence of cultures creates a challenge of competition for resources. And that conflict kind of creates friction. We're also bound by, you know, increasing change and constant complexity. And these things are not going to go away. They're only going to get worse. Another key point that kind of helped me to navigate this question is this quote from Fareed Zakaria in his book, The Post-American World. And when he said, you know, the United States has succeeded in globalizing the world, but along the way, we've forgotten to globalize ourselves. And so we might not be adept at dealing with change as well, because we've often been the catalyst for change across the globe. But now we are no longer the only catalyst, and there are many other players in the change game. So another question for you. Are we born critical thinkers? Go ahead and type yes or no in chat. We got a yes, we have a no, and we have a no. Well, let's see. So ultimately, our brains, from our cognition, we're born with a primitive brain wiring. That primitive brain wiring, often termed the reptilian brain, was designed for our survival. And that survival was predicated on, hey, this saber tooth is coming to eat you. Now you can either turn that around and you can make him dinner, or you might see near certain death and you might need to flee that area, right, and get out of there. We call this our fight or flight. Many of you have heard it. You might not know about its power and that it drives a lot of our behaviors from fear, and it roots itself in the amygdala. Now, even though we're hardwired to stay alive, the beauty of the science and neuroscience that explores today is that our cognitive power is unrealized. There's so much potential, but we have to actually focus and dedicate towards training it, because we're not born critical thinkers, but we're born with the capacity to think critically. We just have to cultivate it. So let's reflect on the Agile Manifesto. And there's a key areas that I wanted to highlight here. You know, when we look at individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, and customer collaboration over contract negotiation. The key thing here that I want to highlight is responding to change over following a plan. And we're going to dive into responding to change a little bit more. So when we look at balancing proactive and reactive change, and we highlight on that responding to change, responding implies that we're reacting to change. And reacting is more an adaptive area. So what about proactive change? And how do we prepare for that? Looking at things more in an agile standpoint and agility. We might think of adaptability as the ability to adjust to new conditions, capable of modifying or repurposing. Whereas agility, on the other hand, is the ability to move quickly and easily, preemptively, to think and understand quickly. Some other thought areas on adaptability. One that's near and dear to Jessica and I is adapt and overcome. A little marine lingo there. Resilient, flexible, urgency. An example might be COVID, that we all know. We had to adapt to COVID. We had to react. While there might have been a moment where we could have been agile prior to, it didn't seem like that played out in our favor as we went through it. And in agility, other thought areas we might think about are preparing for change. For instance, people who are already trained in processes and process owners, they're constantly practicing that proactive aspect of change, forecasting and collaboration being elements of that. And an example might be releasing a new product, being first to market. You know, you had that vision and you carried it out. You know, we never knew we needed a cell phone until we got a cell phone that was a computer. So there's benefits to both. Now, when we look at our agile change rhythm and we think of things proactively and reactively, we might consider that proactive is a carrot or a group of carrots, and reactive might be a stick. Well, let's flip that around. How about a carrot cake? And how about a pool noodle or a rubber stick? So these two forces of change, if unbalanced, can throw your entire organization or team out of balance. You can't be too much in only proactive, and you can't be too much only in reactive. Reality is you have to move those forces from conflict to complement. You need both areas of change, agility and agile, and adaptability. If you don't have that rhythm of change, you're going to consistently be reacting to those forces that force you to respond in ways that you weren't prepared for. So how do you balance agility and adaptability? I invite you to chat, If you got something to thought, or raise your hand, or just go ahead and come off mute.
Okay, I'll throw something in here. I think just the culture of like making it a value to be agile in and of itself, like going back to that agile mindset that when you create a plan, that the value is not in the plan itself. If something changes, then you adapt the plan. If that makes sense.
No, it definitely does. Appreciate that, Jessica. And it's I think Eisenhower said it's planning is indispensable. Plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. And that aspect of planning that definitely can help facilitate both agility, but also adaptability. Thank you. So let's look at some behaviors, and we'll go into a few exercises. So this quote comes from a great book that I often reference called Legacy. It's about the New Zealand All Blacks, and they're the most winning rugby team in the world. And so the marginal gains, 100 things done 1% better, deliver a cumulative competitive advantage. And essentially what that's saying is, don't focus on moving big rocks or big changes. Focus on doing small incremental areas where you can affect change at your level with behaviors and activities. Now, where in Scrum can we capitalize on a 1% gain? Something we're all familiar with. How about the retrospective? When we're doing that reflective meeting, oftentimes in some organizations, people might think that is not as valuable. Well, the retrospective, when it occurs, what's most important is that you actually take those items and you carry forth and put them into action. Retrospective items not taken action on means that the process becomes invaluable to the participants. It becomes less cared about. Now, moving on to some brain daily 1%. I'm going to cue you up here on some thinking ways. So this right here is a tool set that I have used for years. And my objective is to cultivate my thinking along these lenses. It came out of an article that I was presented with while going through a course on irregular warfare. And it has stuck with me since then. And I've constantly sought out how to become a better, you name it, one of the thinkers. So today, though, we're going to focus on two of the thinking areas, and that is critical thinking and creative thinking, to kind of disrupt the resistance to change and maybe open up our aperture for how we can do some collaborative exercises with our teams. So an example of critical thinking, which we'll get into, is maybe thinking more deeply about how our biases impact our thinking. Whereas creative thinking might be something more of something novel, not yet seen or done, something more imaginative. And so in the original article, design thinking did not exist, but I added it in there because it provides some kind of stories and foresight into the process, which gets you into metaphors and analogies, and it helps to drive at all these different thinking. I encourage you to read it. I won't dive into the rest, but we'll keep moving forward. So critical thinking, some key areas here: confirmation bias, hindsight bias, status quo bias, and availability. The key aspect here is that we all have biases, and we have to be okay with recognizing and acknowledging them. Now, the bias that I want to highlight here for us is one that's uniquely suited to be resistant to change, is status quo bias. And you might hear something like, we've always done it this way. I can't stand when I hear it, but I'm sure You've all heard it, maybe even said it, no judgment. But that is one area. And when you look at how you might gravitate to these, think about in a team if you were to talk about these openly. Hey, what bias might we be imparting on this material, on this project, on this news article? We have the power to expand our ways of thinking, but we have to at least acknowledge the fallacies of our thinking. Otherwise, our cognitive dissonance will prevent our changing cognitions. Now, the next exercise I want to run with you is a creative thinking exercise. And we're going to do 3 iterations here. So I want you to go ahead and type in a chat. Now, when life gives you lemons, you what? And you can't say you make lemonade. Don't think too hard. First thought, best thought. Plant the seeds. You eat them. You sell them to people. Love it. All right. We're going to do round 2 now. When life gives you lemons here on the second round, you need to connect opposites. So the first time you probably went to what was most available, what was most logical. Now I want you to connect 2 opposing things that would not be combined together. Lemon and something that are not combined together. When life gives you lemons, this is the opposites. You what? I just saw that smash them and drink their tears. Play soccer with them. Love it. Throw them in a trash rather than use them. Waste not, want not, Jessica. Not a lemon fan, huh? All right, decorations. Thanks, Willie. Make an agility cake. Now the third one, we're going to do one more round here. One more round. Now this one is the novelty round. So when you combine something with lemon, it should be, someone should look at you. If you said this out on the street, they look at you like you had a unicorn growing out of your forehead. So it should be off of the radar of something logical and kind of building on the opposite space to go even further, to go deeper. When life gives you lemons, think of something novel and go deeper. Got a lemon god. A house foundation with lemons. You might never have to clean the floors then. Paint them and sell the art. Nice. Hey, I appreciate all the participation on that. That was great. So what that exercise can do is, you notice how we went through 3 iterations. And what that did was break down, well, I have to say things that people expect me to say. Then you go into opposites and say, now I got Vivu here, take the color of lemon and paint the town yellow. Party with lemons at Vivu's house. So it gets people breaking the mold and the paradigm of the constraints that society places on them. But it also has this shared effect when you do it in a team, that it creates bonding and openness and receptiveness to ideas. And those ideas can be as wild and broad as possible because you do this without judgment. And it becomes kind of fun and collaborative. So therefore, you're conditioning people to cognitions and behaviors of change. Now, getting things to move from idea to action, that's a whole nother thing. But at least the behaviors for change are being cultivated through these exercises of self-recognition of biases, and then the collaborative kind of creative exercise, creative thinking exercise. Now, training all these thinking skills is a timeless endeavor. And I encourage you to dive in and continue to cultivate your thinking as well as your team's thinking. It's a lifelong pursuit. Now, remember your favorite food? I kind of primed you to some availability bias there. Now, we said that if you had that favorite food, you would have to eat it for the entire year, the only thing you could eat. We had ice cream, we had Thai, and I can't remember the third one. But now, how would you feel if all those food options that everyone listed were available for the year? Would that be a better endeavor? Jessica loves Thai. Well, she's got dessert with ice cream, so I think everybody's good there. What that means, what that kind of gets at is change alone might not be as beneficial or as receptive as change together. There's a shared collaboration and kind of bonding that occurs through shared change and growth. Now, we'll reflect on the takeaways here and then open up for your thoughts. Ultimately, our factors of change, constant change and increasing complexity, it's here to stay. So we have to develop, the skills to navigate that. We got to unlock our brain's potential to move beyond our primal cognition, which means we need to take a proactive step towards balancing proactive and reactive change and creating that change rhythm for us and our teams. We can do this by incorporating our daily 1%, change our behaviors for us and our team through small exercises that facilitate shared cohesion and growth. I want to thank you for your time today, and I encourage your feedback because I want to know what's on your mind.